"Dad says you're adopted," he told me, like tossing a stone into a well. My name is Maeve Larkins, and the well was my chest. The word fell, struck something that had taken years to harden, and kept falling. I was 28, living in my mother's old blue Craftsman on Linden Street, teaching 4th grade 2 towns over, and watering the roses she planted the summer before she got sick. The night my father said it, the porch light drew tiny moths, and the hallways smelled faintly of lemon oil and the sea. He had come to collect boxes of boat parts he insisted were stored in the basement. We had been civil since Mom's funeral, careful with our sentences, quiet around the edges of a subject we both avoided. He bent to lift a crate, breath a little short, shirt sticking to his back. Then he straightened, and something mean and simple flashed through his eyes. He said it like a correction. He said it like, "We were done." "You know you're adopted, Maeve," my father said, flat and calm, not looking at me. "Your mother never wanted to tell you." It seemed kinder that way. Knees numb, I leaned on the doorframe. The house tilted, then steadied. My father cradled the box like a child, walked past me, and did not meet my eyes. I heard the tailgate slam, the engine turn over, gravel crunching as he left. He did not come back for the other boxes. The quiet afterwards was an animal, large and patient. I folded my hands to give them something to do. In the living room, a photo of my mother and me at Cannon Beach tilted slightly, a wave curling behind our laughing faces, our hair blown into the same wild shape. I crossed the room and straightened it. The glass felt cool against my fingertips. Adopted. The word was new and too big. It scraped the walls of memories that had nothing but her. Her laugh while teaching me to braid. Her voice at 2 in the morning, promising the fever would break. Her hand signing every school form, every field trip slip, with a looping M that always went a little too far. I tried to imagine a different name on those lines. I could not. That night I made tea, and did not drink it. I sat at the table and stared at the steam until it thinned, then vanished. I pressed my index finger to the ring stain Mom had scolded me for making in high school when I snuck coffee for late-night studying. My father's truck appeared once behind my eyes, red in the porch light, then drained away into the dark street. I slept badly, then woke before the birds. The house held its breath. I wandered the rooms barefoot, touching the frames of doorways, counting the steps between kitchen and dining room, between dining room and the small office where Mom kept the taxes, the appliance warranties, the folding tape measure with faded numbers. In the office closet, 2 shelves sagged with neat banker's boxes. I had not opened them since we cleaned after the funeral. It felt like touching a bruise. I took one box down, slid the lid away, and smelled paper and dust, something dry and forgiving. I found the mortgage statements, the water bills, the last packet from the hospital, my mother's handwriting careful on sticky notes. Behind a folder of recipes, there was a flat package wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. I pulled it free and sat on the carpet with my legs folded, heart a quiet drum. On the paper, my mother had written only my name. The letters were her calm, steady hand. The twine was looped twice. I picked at a knot that had hardened. The knot did not move. My lips shaped a small, sorry laugh. Then I pressed the package to my chest. The betrayal had opened a new, narrow door. I felt the draft. I knew I would step through it. The next day, the rumor moved like fog, slow and everywhere at once. I saw it in the way Linda from the bakery watched me count change. I felt it when 2 parents at school paused their conversation as I passed, their voices softening into worry. News in a small coastal town is water with memory, curling around rocks, returning with each tide. My father's words had slipped into it and spread, clear and cold. At work, my principal asked if I needed time off. His kindness pinched. In the classroom, my students tugged at my sleeve, asking about spelling lists and music assemblies, their faces frank and forgiving. Children were easier. They asked questions without fear and waited for plain answers. I gave them what I could. We sorted pencils by length after lunch. We read a chapter about otters holding hands while they sleep. We cleaned the terrarium. I breathed until my chest loosened. At home, the quiet animal returned. I wrote long emails to friends and did not send them. I drafted versions of the conversation I needed to have with my father. In each version, he was either repentant or resolute, and in both cases, I was steady. I practiced being steady by washing the baseboards and oiling the cutting board. I folded every towel to the same width. I took the wrapped package from the office and set it on the dining table, where the late sun fell across it like a hand. That evening, my brother, Ethan, called from Denver. He had moved away after high school, taking his skateboard and his impatience with our town. He loved Mom fiercely, and Dad in the particular way sons can, half admiration, half argument. "Is it true?" he asked, voice held low, as if someone might overhear from 1,000 miles away. "I don't know," I said, honest and small.
He said it.
Then he left. "Maeve," Ethan said, the word a rope. "He wouldn't say that to hurt you. There must be a reason."
"There is always a reason," I said.
"We do not always approve of it." He sighed, his breath filling the distance. "You want me to call him?" "No," I said, steady for the first time. "Not yet." We talked about ordinary things because our family had taught us to survive on ordinary things. We said goodbye, "I love you, talk soon." I put the phone face down and listened to the house settle. Then I looked at the package and felt the quiet click of an internal lock sliding open. I fetched Mom's sewing kit, the one with a pair of sharp, reliable scissors. I cut the twine with a single decisive snip. The paper rasped as it opened. Inside lay a cloth-covered book, green faded toward gray, corners softened by time. A date was embossed on the first page in gold, almost rubbed away by fingers. My mother's handwriting began, neat as a ruler, leaving generous margins like a teacher. I did not read the first page. I closed the diary and pressed it flat against the table. It was midnight, and every light in the house was on. The roses outside breathed against the windows. I thought of Dad's hand on the tailgate, the careful way he lowered it, like a man who never meant harm. I thought of his voice, even and calm, delivering the word as if reciting a fact. I thought of the way grief makes us into versions of ourselves we do not always recognize. I made tea, and this time I drank it. I washed the cup and dried it with a towel that still smelled faintly of the lemon detergent Mom liked. Then I carried the diary to my bedroom and set it on the nightstand. I turned off the lamp. I let the dark return to its shape. In that dark, I made a vow, quiet and simple. I would read what she left. I would follow what it asked of me. I would not raise my voice. I would not plead. I would take each step like a person walking a narrow path carved along a cliff, eyes forward, hands grazing the wall. I would find the truth where she put it, and I would carry it gently until it could carry itself. I opened the diary in the morning, when light is honest and unforgiving. The first entries were practical. Recipes she liked, books she wanted to read, the name of a contractor who returned calls. Between the lines, there was a woman I already knew, patient and precise, saving room for whatever might arrive. A week after that, her handwriting shifted. The letters leaned further right, as if breaking into a run. The entry dated March 17th held the news. "Today," she wrote, "I heard your heartbeat." She described the ultrasound as if it were weather, a sudden clearing, a sky opening over a field. She wrote my name twice, once plain, once with a flourish, as if trying it on for its weight. She wrote about Dad's face, astonished, bright, a man lit from inside. Reading those lines, my chest filled, then ached in a different place than before. The next entries lived between doctor appointments and grocery lists. She wrote about a crib she found at a consignment shop, its wood scratched in a way that made it seem truthful. She wrote about craving peaches in January, about laughing at the impossibility of that, then driving to 3 stores until she found a bruised one that tasted like summer, if you believed hard enough. She wrote about my first kick, small and insistent, like a finger tapping a window. 3 months later, the tone thinned. She mentioned Dad's late nights at the harbor, the boat deal that might change everything, The argument that ended not with shouting but with a door closing so quietly it was almost a kindness. She did not dramatize. She recorded. She wrapped truth in simple words, then tied the knot. In July, there was a page creased by a tear, a single round stain that had dried into a pale circle. If anything happens, she wrote, there is a letter with Olivia. I paused. Olivia was our neighbor for years, the retired librarian who coaxed me toward reading chapter books with chocolate coins and stern affection. She had moved to assisted living last winter, leaving her wind chimes and her red geraniums to the next tenant. I kept reading. My mother had tucked a slip inside the diary's back cover, taped with careful corners. It held a bank name, a branch address, and a safety deposit box number. Beneath that, a date. It was 1 week after my due date. My hands went still. I felt the shape of a plan nested inside the shape of a life. I called Olivia's daughter, Nora, whom I had seen at the grocery store often enough to know her smile. She answered on the second ring, her voice brisk and kind. When I told her what I had found, there was a long silence on the line, respectful, almost ceremonial. Come by this afternoon, she said. Mom will be radiant with errands. She has been waiting for someone to ask. The assisted living lobby smelled faintly of coffee and furniture polish. Olivia was smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were fox-bright, cunning and compassionate. She took my hands, turned them palm up, as if reading the map of my life. Your mother, she said, voice thin but certain, was the bravest person I knew. We sat by a window where the world was framed like a painting. She pulled a small tin from her purse, the kind that once held mints. Inside lay a folded envelope, the flap sealed with tape, my mother's handwriting steady over the seam. My name. She gave me this 1 week before you were born, Olivia said. She said, if I was ever to doubt your father's memory, to give it to you, it was not a threat. It was a hedge against fog. I took the envelope. I did not open it there. Olivia nodded, approving the restraint. We spoke of roses and weather and the book club that dissolved when everyone began watching television during meetings. Then she rested her hand on mine. There is a kindness, she said, in letting truth walk through the door on its own feet. At home, I opened the envelope at the dining table. Inside was a letter addressed to me and a photocopy of my birth certificate bearing both my parents' names, signatures firm, ink dark and unambiguous. The letter was short. She wrote that Dad was under pressure, that he loved me imperfectly, that people sometimes break the thing they mean to protect. She wrote that the safety deposit box held a second copy and a small fund saved from her teaching years, meant to anchor me if the current turned rough. I felt the resolve find its spine. I called Nora, who worked part-time at a law office in town. We do wills and deeds, she said, and the occasional storm. She gave me the number of Avery Cho, a lawyer who liked quiet cases and wrote letters that closed doors softly after they opened them. I dialed, and when a calm voice answered, I heard my mother's steady hand in the shape of this next step. We met at Avery's office on a Wednesday, when fishermen mend nets in sunlight. The room was spare and orderly. A fern leaned toward a window. A framed print of a lighthouse held the far wall, and the light inside it did not move. Avery wore a navy suit and fielded pauses like a catcher, still and attentive. She had me place the diary, the letter, and the photocopy on the table, then stacked them without fuss. She asked a few questions, each one small and exact, then nodded as if the answers had arrived in the shape she expected. Would you like me to invite your father in? She asked. Or do you prefer to let the letter travel first? Invite him, I said. He should sit with what he made. Avery's assistant called him. He arrived 20 minutes later, shoulders square, jaw set. He nodded at me, then at Avery, then at the fern. He sat with his hands on his knees, the posture of a man braced for weather. His face softened when he saw the diary. Something moved through his eyes, quick as a fish, and was gone. Avery began with courtesy. Mr. Larkins, she said, measured and clear. Thank you for coming. Maeve has brought documents left by her mother. We will review them and, if you wish, you may respond. We will speak plainly and respectfully. My father's gaze slid to me, then past me. This isn't necessary, he said. I was trying to spare her. Avery's hand hovered over the letter, then withdrew. We are going to read what Marie wrote, she said, because she asked us to. Then we will make decisions based on what is true. I watched his throat move. He cleared it, and the room seemed to reset. Avery read my mother's letter aloud, low and even, furnishing the words with air. The sentences were simple and sturdy. They did not plead. They asked nothing but to be believed. When she reached the part about pressure and love, my father's hands turned into fists and then softened, as if remembering they were hands. Avery slid the photocopy of my birth certificate across the table. This is not a courtroom, she said, but documents still have weight. Words, too. My father looked at the certificate and did not touch it. I said it to stop a fight, he said, voice tired. The boat deal fell through, the mortgage was due, I had the harbor committee on me about permits. Maeve wanted to change schools or something, and I wanted to make the conversation end. He swallowed. It was a bad sentence. I am sorry for the sentence. I breathed in and out. My hands were folded. It became a rumor, I said, quiet. It became a history. He nodded, a small, frightened movement. I'll fix it, he said, automatic, as if fixing things had ever been his cleanest skill. Avery lifted a second letter from a folder. There are 2 matters, she said. First, a formal retraction and apology to your daughter, delivered in writing, acknowledging her as your child. Second, the small fund in Marie's safety deposit box, which she intended for Maeve, remains intact. You will not contest or interfere. You will also stop circulating any story to the contrary, by word or by shrug. He looked at me again, and this time he met my eyes. I thought I was saving you from something, he said. The lie wilted, then dead. I was angry. I was cruel. I did not think ahead. You rarely had to, I said. Mom did it for you.
We sat with that.
The sentence hung like a plumb line, true and brutal. He nodded again, slow. I will sign, he said. His voice was not defiant. It had lost its shape and found a smaller one. Avery guided him through the pages. He read, lips moving slightly, then signed each line by his name, the signature careful, as if promising himself he would not change it later. She made copies, paper whispering, machine warm, ink settling into fibers. She handed me the originals and tucked the duplicates into a folder with a clasp. My father stood. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at his hands as if they belonged to a photograph. I will call Ethan, he said finally. I will tell the truth, the long way around. I nodded. Thank you, I said. It was not absolution. It was acknowledgement that he had walked into a room and stayed sitting. He left without another word. The fern brushed the window. The lighthouse on the wall continued to send its steady, painted beam. Avery poured water into 2 glasses and passed one to me. We drank, and the act felt like something sacred and simple. The room returned to ordinary, furniture resuming its quiet jobs, papers cooling under my palm. Justice, when it is quiet, sounds like a door clicking closed with a firm, soft latch. I went to the bank with Avery the next morning, when light felt new. The safety deposit box opened with a steady turn and a small metallic sigh. Inside, my mother's thoroughness waited, kind and complete. A second photocopy of the birth certificate rested on top, followed by the passbook for an old savings account carrying a balance that was not large, but felt heavier than numbers. There was also a small, worn coin purse containing my baby bracelet, the tiny beads spelling Maeve in pastel letters rubbed almost blank. The purse smelled faintly of talc and thyme. Avery signed what needed signing. The teller watched us with a professional, gentle gaze. We walked out into air that tasted like salt and fur. On the sidewalk, Avery handed me a plain envelope. Inside lay the formal apology my father had signed, printed on his company letterhead, a fisherman in black silhouette hauling a net, the name of his business arched above. The words below were exact and unadorned. He acknowledged the harm, named it without shielding, and apologized. He called me his daughter. I brought the envelope home and slid it under the diary on the shelf, the documents layered like sediment, forming new ground. Then I went outside with pruning shears to tend the roses. I cut spent blossoms and dipped the stems in a small jar of water, a trick my mother taught me to coax a second bloom. The morning bent over the garden. A neighbor waved, then continued on, her dog's leash looping loosely. The world did not change its gait. Around noon, Ethan called. He told me, he said, voice thick with the old ache, then clearer. He was a coward. He knows it. He's seeing Pastor Mike this afternoon. He asked if I thought you would speak to him next week. I will, I said. Not to begin again, but to finish properly. Ethan was quiet, then exhaled. You sound like Mom, he said. It landed like a blessing I did not deserve and decided to try to earn. In the days that followed, small repairs offered themselves. I called the principal and asked for a meeting. In his office, I explained the situation in simple terms, then provided the letter. I don't require anything, I said, except that the school be a place where facts are kept clean. He nodded, grateful for instructions he could follow with integrity. He told me a parent had already called to apologize for repeating what she had not verified. We smiled, tired, then returned to our separate lists. I stopped by Olivia's residence with a small bouquet of roses, the petals a color my mother called sunrise. Olivia's eyes brightened. You walked the path, she said. How is the view from the ledge? Sea and rock, I said. And a lighthouse that is only paint, but still works. She laughed, delighted. She placed the bouquet in a chipped vase with a hummingbird painted on it. Your mother would be proud of the way you held the line, she said. She did not like shouting. She preferred the truth to speak in complete sentences. On Sunday, I drove to the harbor and watched boats enter and leave, nets coiled and thrown, gulls measuring the air. I saw my father on the pier, speaking to a man about engine parts, his gestures smaller, his shoulders less convinced. I did not approach him. Not yet. I watched him break off his conversation, stare at the horizon for a long time, then wipe his hands on a cloth as if they had gathered something he needed to let go. At home, I took my mother's diary to the back steps where the shade is kind in afternoon. I read a few pages without hunger, letting her voice be just a voice, not a map. An entry near the end of the pregnancy spoke about faith of the ordinary kind, made of checklists and steady breath. She wrote that she hoped I would know the difference between loudness and strength, between spectacle and resolve. She wrote that I might love the world despite its careless hands. I closed the diary and looked at my own hands, freckled. Rope burns still faint from carrying her boxes the week she came home from the hospital. The roses trembled with some small wind. A child on a scooter clipped by the gate and shouted sorry, then waved. The house held my mother's quiet the way a body holds a heartbeat, steady and unseen. Something loosened in me, then settled. The story did not end with a hammer. It ended as a room finds its level after someone leaves. It ended with papers in order, with a garden trimmed, with a sister and a brother speaking in the same weather, with a father learning a new tone. It ended with a sentence signed in honest ink. That evening, I brewed chamomile tea and carried the cup to the porch. The street performed its usual play, neighbor to neighbor, porch light to porch light. I thought of those moths drawn to the light on the terrible night, and how they had no idea about our human sentences. I thought of my mother placing a diary on a shelf, trusting that I would be the kind of woman who could open it when opening was required. I am that woman. I know that now, quiet as a knot untied. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.